This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injuries and additional coverage and subject to policy terms. This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's tax season, and we're all a bit tired of numbers. But here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now here's a good number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it. Guaranteed. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
This podcast contains adult themes and language, and some of the things that we discuss may be disturbing to some listeners. In this podcast, we discuss sexual assault, torture, race, and murder. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care of yourself.
And welcome to Fruitloops. Buiti binafi and bienvenidos, bitches. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah.
Fruitloops is a podcast about true crimes committed by people of color and those who are othered and the victims, because there are, believe it or not, systems, institutions, and patterns in society that gatekeep this information. But we're going to give it to you straight, no chaser. The truth is, we're all capable of doing very shitty stuff.
Yep.
And all victims deserve to have their stories told. These crimes rarely get any public attention because, in the simplest of terms, the news is racist. Allegedly.
And we are Wendy and Beth. She's Wendy, a Black Latinx woman, and I'm Beth, and I just happen to be white.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's just a little piece of who we are.
Oh, yes.
But who we are not is journalists, investigators, or psychologists. We're just a couple of gals interested in true crime. Also, the opinions expressed in this podcast are just that, our opinions.
Oh, right, friend. Who are we talking about today?
Well, today is our episode 243 about Nicholas Lee Wiley, a.k.a. the Syracuse Serial Killer, an American serial killer and sex offender who killed 3 women in Syracuse, New York in 2004 within months of his release from prison as a high-risk level 3 sex offender.
All right. We got a lot of unpacking to do here.
Yes, we do.
What? After his release?
Yes.
But before we get into it, how you doing?
I'm doing better today. I'll tell you what. We got back from CrimeCon, and immediately I was diagnosed with COVID. So
no,
yeah, first time I ever got COVID.
No,
ran a fever for like 3 days.
A fever? An adult with a fever for 3 days is not good.
Not fun. And then I was feeling better, but I've been dizzy for like several days. Today, I think, is the first day that I've been mostly not dizzy.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Every other day I've been mostly dizzy.
So is it worse when you're like walking around or sitting down? It's just all the time?
Just all the time, yeah. But it's much better today.
That's good.
It made it really hard to think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yesterday afternoon, I've been working from home because I can't go into the office. And so I was working on some projects and I kept fucking things up because I can't think.
Oh.
And finally, my boss was like, why don't you take the afternoon off?
Really?
Yeah, because I kept fucking shit up.
Is it the boss that we were talking about?
Yep.
Oh, wow. That's really nice of that boss.
Yeah, well, I kept fucking shit up, so, you know.
But that's really kind of that person to be like, hey, I know you're struggling.
You're struggling, yeah.
Let me throw you a bone here.
Yep,
I am so surprised that person did that.
And I think it did help a lot because, I feel much better today. So,
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah. When we were in the UK, we just got back from London town.
Right.
We had CrimeCon UK, which was fucking fire.
yeah.
But every day, Beth and I were taking like those immunity shots because
Yep.
I was feeling like if I didn't, I felt like I was getting the flu.
Yeah, we had jet lag
Mhm.
pretty bad the second day. Like the first day, we were fine. And then the
Oh my
second day,
gosh.
we were both feeling sick.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, we took some vitamin C and
Emergency. Yeah.
yeah. And then I was fine. And when I
Mhm.
got home, it was similar.
Mhm.
Second day, I wasn't feeling good. So I figured it's jet lag again. But nope, it was COVID.
It was COVID. Son of a bitch.
Son of a.
Do you have all those, like a bunch of tests in your home from,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last time they let us have free tests.
Yes.
The second round of free tests. And I hear there's going to be a third round of free tests soon.
Oh, right. Come on through, Joe Byron, and them free tests. Thank you. Yeah, no, we stocked up.
Yeah.
Because, you never know. You never know.
Right.
And I'm glad you're on the mend, friend.
Well, thanks.
Yes. London town. We were in England. Did not see... Well, we saw a lot of London. We saw
we did.
Oh boy, it was incredible. And the people with CrimeCon UK, Nancy and her entire team were amazing. We are so grateful. We felt so welcome, and we really cannot wait to go back.
Yeah, we're definitely going back. It's
Yeah.
in June next year.
Yeah.
So you guys should go to this one.
Yeah.
If you go to any crime con, I mean, the one in the US is huge.
Mhm.
So they get a lot of celebrities and stuff, but you can't hobnob with them.
Right.
At CrimeCon UK, you can hobnob with them.
And that is Caucasian for...
Oh, hang out with, talk
okay.
to.
Okay. I was like, it sounds like Hobby Lobby, and I thought,
Oh,
maybe
no.
like arts and crafts.
Oh, no,
with them?
girl.
Oh, okay.
I hate Hobby Lobby.
There's plenty of reasons to hate Hobby Lobby, and I agree with you. Unless they want to be a sponsor. Just kidding. We're not interested.
Not in a million years.
But if you do want to go to CrimeCon UK next year and be a part of the fun and learning, oh man, we actually got to sit in sessions and try to solve a crime. It was so cool.
It was really fun.
You can use the code Fruitloops now to get 10% off.
Yep.
It's still good and it works for next year.
Yep.
So now let's get into some listener letters.
All right. Well, hello, angels. Thank you.
What's in that bag, Beth?
Well, as you mentioned, we just got back from CrimeCon and we met so many awesome people and podcasters there.
Mm-hmm.
And while we were away, our episode on the New Bedford Strangler dropped. And our fruity Corey with a K, who requested the episode, got at us with a correction/culture corner that we have to share with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So here it is. So this is what Corey said. It's crazy hearing about all the exits and streets I drive on almost every day. My manager actually made a documentary video on YouTube that you might have seen. Something a lot of people who aren't from the area don't know is that a lot of the community is actually mixed. The Black population mostly comes from Cape Verde, a previously uninhabited archipelago that the Portuguese brought slaves to in order to claim the resources on the islands. This leads to a racially ambiguous population in most parts of the city, as many Cape Verdeans migrated to New Bedford for the fishing industry. I have friends who are Cape Verdean who pass for white, others who pass for mixed, and others who are dark-skinned Black people. The features can be any combination of West African to East European. A lot of us have lighter colored eyes. Mine are like a honey brown color. Unfortunately, this also leads to incorrect census data because most Cape Verdeans don't know what to classify themselves as. And also with the class issues, you're absolutely correct. The North End has money. South End is struggling, but the West End is dirt poor with little to no resources. So that's from Corey.
Thank you so much, Corey. Hip hop air horns to our fruity Corey, whom we love so very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, and we did give census data in that episode, and
could be wrong.
You don't know what you don't know, and now we know because of Corey.
Exactly.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And if you have any questions or comments, please send them to fruitloopspod@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at
602-935-6294.
And we may feature it on a future episode, but if you don't want us to, just let us know and we won't.
Just a quick shout out to, we met so many people at CrimeCon, too many people to name, but special thanks to CrimeCon UK, Nancy, Sonia, Danny H, Freddie, Stephanie W, Thisbe, and Gemma of Cold Tapes, Julia T, Bethan, and Mark, and Christy A, and so many more. Those are people who we met and signed our guest book and stopped by our table. We just thank you very much. And guess what? Hip hop air horse to everybody.
Yeah, and special thanks to David, too.
Yes, David is a dream of a human. And we love you and can't wait to see you again. So let's take a quick break and then we're going to get into the story when we come back.
From DNA testing to the Dixie Mafia, Crime Capsule brings you new stories of true crime in American history. I'm your host, Benjamin Morris. Join us for exclusive interviews with authors from Arcadia Publishing, writing the hottest books on the most chilling stories of our country's past. You can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts or on evergreenpodcasts.com. Crime Capsule. History so interesting, it's criminal.
So when the scammer uses the hypnotic method of building rapport, then they create dysfunctional, delusional reality.
That's how a scam begins, convincing the mark that it makes perfect sense to hand over their money to a con artist. The Scams and Cons podcast tells you how scams are run. You'll hear how people are convinced to buy fake art, buy machines that print money, or steal your house.
I get a phone call from my wife, and she let me know that they had decided to move all our stuff out. I could no longer do anything about it except go through an eviction.
And you'll hear it from the experts, people who run the cons.
So we go to your bank, you go in and get $6,000 cash, give us each $3,000, we give you this. You go home, and what you find out is cut up newspaper.
It's fun to know how the trick is done, and that's what Scams and Cons is all about. Listen at scamsandcons.com or wherever fine podcasts are found.
And we're back.
Hello.
Hello. Remind us, Beth, who is our subject today?
Our subject today is Nicholas Lee Wiley, a.k.a. the Syracuse Serial Killer, an American serial killer and sex offender who murdered 3 women in Syracuse, New York in 2004, shortly after his release from prison as a high-risk level 3 sex offender.
Huh?
He actually claimed to have killed a total of 7 people, although authorities could only confirm 3 victims.
All right. Now it's time for the Love and Light section of our program where we say rest in power to the victims whose lives were cut too short, and love and light to their loved ones and communities and everyone left in the wake of this crime. So the victims are Tammy Sue Lynn Passino, 18 years old, Hannah Finnerty, 22 years old, and Lottie Thompson, 31 years old. Rest in power to those queens. Now let's get into the setting. Take us there, Beth.
Well, the setting is Syracuse, a city located in central New York. The land that the city sits on was once the domain of the Onondaga people and the headquarters of the Iroquois Confederacy, a confederation of 5, later 6, Native American tribes across upper New York State.
Black people listening are like, Confederacy? That's what I thought. But it just means
different
a
kind
group.
of confederacy.
Yeah, a group. So Syracuse was named after the classical Greek city of Syracuse. It sits on the southern end of Onondaga Lake, the location of some salt springs, which later became the basis for a prosperous salt industry.
At first, Native American hostility and the swampy location made early European settlement impractical. But by 1786, a trading post had been built at the mouth of the Onondaga Creek, where it entered Lake Onondaga, and in 1788, sawmills and grist mills were built at the site.
What's grist?
Grain.
Got it. I was going to say, they were so determined, Europeans.
Yes, they were.
It was really hard.
They
They
They're
really
like,
wanted
we're
to
gonna
steal
get
that
We're going
land.
to fucking get that land. Woo!
Oh my God. A treaty with the Native Americans gave the state of New York control over the salt springs. And after 1797, the salt lands were leased for salt extraction. The town growth was stimulated by construction of the Erie Canal, completed in 1825, and the arrival of the railroads in the 1830s.
Syracuse has sometimes been called Salt City because the salt works actually supplied most of the United States' needs for salt. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Until 1870, when the salt industry declined. The city then began to develop a more diversified economy.
Manufacturers now include Chinaware, pharmaceuticals, automotive components, electrical machinery, air conditioners, electronic equipment, funeral caskets, specialty metals, and furniture. Syracuse also serves as a wholesale distribution point for the central New York agricultural region.
For most of the 19th century, there were a small number of Black folks in Syracuse, many living near the First AME Zion Church. By the 1920s, during the Great Migration, there was a steady influx of Black folks.
It makes sense. They lived near a Black church because that has been and
That's where
still
the
is a
community is.
pillar of the Black community. Now, during this time, thousands of Black people migrated from the South to the North, fleeing white racial violence and in search of jobs. Prejudice and discrimination kept most Black people overcrowded in substandard housing within the limits of the increasingly crowded 15th Ward, a segregated Black community.
In the 1930s through the 1950s, it had diners, barbershops, schools, churches, stores, and community centers. Local Black businesses served their neighborhood, while job opportunities in other areas were often limited to porters, cooks, waiters, domestics, or unskilled laborers.
In 1950, almost 4,000 Black people, 8 of every 9 in Syracuse, lived there. By 1960, the Black population reached 11,210, a 144% rise if you were doing the math.
Yeah.
But Black citizens comprised a little over 5% of city residents and lacked much political influence.
Even those who went to college had a hard time finding suitable work after graduation, meaning that they couldn't find work in their chosen careers.
Mm-hmm.
Many highly educated Black men and women had to leave Syracuse in order to become successful at their chosen profession.
So, quick culture corner. Actually, it's not super quick, but it's important. While the U.S. has patted itself on the back for ending the horrific practice of chattel slavery and progress on civil rights, we still have a ways to go. And it has been said that since Black people gained access to education in the USA, that education is less valuable. And that is due to economic shifts and a thing called degree inflation. Just a couple reasons. Now, more people, including Black individuals, are getting degrees, which has led to this degree inflation. And this means that jobs that once required only a high school diploma now require a bachelor's degree. And those that required a bachelor's degree now often require a master's degree. And Black students in college are often overrepresented in majors that lead to low-paying jobs in public service, social work, and education. And sometimes the jobs available, like, remember during the pandemic where there were a ton of gig workers and service and hospitality jobs were all of a sudden non-existent? That leads me to another point. Ever wonder where tipping comes from? And I was talking to you about this while we were in London, Beth.
Yeah, I remember.
Another thing. So after the Civil War, industries like hospitality hired newly emancipated, formerly enslaved Black men and women, but refused to pay them anything, let alone a living wage, leaving them to rely on patrons' generosity for their livelihood, for their entire paycheck.
Wow.
And if a patron was super hateful and super racist or sexist or any other ist, that drastically impacts someone who already is limited in the types of employment available to them to be able to survive.
Right.
And that practice continues to this day. So anyway,
gross.
Cut back to the setting. In the early 1960s, massive urban renewal, aka Negro removal programs, and the construction of Interstate 81 called for the demolition of the 15th Ward. The entire thing. Over 27 blocks were targeted, displacing 75% of the local Black population, a population that would need relocation.
It's wild to me how this happens over and over again in every city.
In every single
city.
one.
Yeah.
You know what? Get out your bingo cards if we ever cover an episode where this doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen, yeah. Black people at first hoped that the plan would lead to better housing and more citywide integration. But it soon became apparent that that wasn't going to happen. As people were forced from their homes, the options to move were limited on several fronts.
Real estate agents purposely limited the options presented to Black families. In fact, its guide from 1926, the National Association of Realtors, told its members, quote, "A realtor should never be instrumental in introducing into a neighborhood members of any race or nationality whose presence will clearly be detrimental to property values," unquote.
Gross.
Mm-hmm.
There were also covenants attached to property outside the city's red-lined neighborhoods that were racially explicit. One deed from the Scottholm neighborhood of Syracuse stated, quote, "Said lot shall not during the aforesaid period be occupied by or conveyed to Negroes as owners or tenants," unquote.
And remember the Homeowners Loan Corporation maps and the federal housing programs that had tied race-based appraisals to lending for home building and purchasing, redlining practices among bankers, mortgage lenders, and the federal government diminished housing mobility and options for Black families in Syracuse.
As most of the 15th Ward was torn down, hundreds of Black families were pushed south and east of the ward into other run-down older neighborhoods. Even today, Syracuse remains highly segregated.
A 2017 report rated Syracuse the 8th worst city for Black Americans
Wow.
in the United States.
Wow.
Wow. It's in the top 10.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Not good, no.
Poor Black neighborhoods and wealthy white neighborhoods are physically separated by I-81. The income gap is large. Black people in central New York earn just 44.2% as much as white people.
Wow. That's less than 50%.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Nearly 40% of Black residents in Syracuse live below the poverty line, compared to 11% of white residents. And the unemployment rate for Black residents is 15%, compared to 4.4% for white residents. Yeah.
Whoa. That's out of control.
That's
Who's in
disgusting.
charge over there?
Yeah. White people.
Ba-dum-bum. So let's get into the early life of Nicholas Lee Wiley.
Okay.
Nicholas Lee Wiley was born on July 17th, 1962 in Apopka, Florida. He moved with his family to Syracuse, New York sometime during his childhood. His mother, Ruby, was a self-employed daycare provider.
Nicholas had 2 brothers and a sister who died in 1966. His mother also took in foster children and eventually adopted 2 girls. We don't know much at all about the family, his early life, his brothers and sisters, or anything. But according to a neighbor, his mother, Ruby, talked about all of her children, but not Nicholas.
What?
And then Ruby died in 2002 at the age of 54. Really young.
Yeah. Not uncommon, though, for Black people, as we've talked about, the weathering of our bodies and minds due to systems of oppression. Anyway, let's get into the timeline. In January of 1979, when he was just 16, Wiley sexually assaulted a 25-year-old woman in his apartment and then stabbed her in the chest.
He was just 16.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
He was convicted of this crime and spent 4 years in prison. He was released in 1983 at the age of 20.
That same year, he was charged with entering a home on Niagara Street and beating a 66-year-old woman in the head with a claw hammer.
Oh my!
He cut her telephone line and got away with $60 and $6 in food stamps.
For that crime, he was convicted of first-degree burglary. But after an appeals court ruled that he had ineffective counsel, his sentence was overturned and his jail time reduced. After spending 7 years in prison, Wiley was released in June of 1991.
The next month, just the very next month, on July 17th, his 29th birthday, Wiley beat and sexually assaulted a 16-year-old girl. He tied her hands behind her back and told her that her purpose was to please men. Ugh. He later told a parole officer that he had seriously considered killing the girl.
He told the parole
He told
officer that?
the parole officer that.
What
Yeah.
an idiot. This guy is not good anyway, but
No.
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So he was convicted of first-degree sodomy and sentenced to the maximum penalty, 12 to 25 years in prison. But because of a legal technicality, his conviction was again overturned on appeal, and Wiley was convicted on a lesser charge and sentenced to 6 to 12 years in prison.
Is the pressure of your wedding day being perfect from sunrise to sunset weighing on your mind? Planning a wedding is stressful. But guess what? We are here to help. On the Bridezilla podcast, we celebrate love and help you plan your wedding day. We're all about keeping it real and having fun every step of the way. So whether you're just starting to plan or counting down the days, we're here to help you stay cool, calm, and collected. We have expert tips and amazing guests, like wedding dress designer Haley Page. Let's get this party started and embrace your inner Bridezilla. Listen to Bridezilla wherever you get podcasts or visit us at thebridezilla.com.
24 hours ago, I found out the person that I'd been dating and seeing for the last 6 months as a con man.
That is my sister Emma. Andrew Tonks's lies had been so convincing, she'd invested $300,000 with him. However, the tables were about to turn on Andrew. What he didn't know was that Emma had discovered his real identity. But to get any chance of justice, Emma had to act like it was business as usual. Coming up in this series,
and that's when murder, all this stuff goes through my mind. I'm really, really scared.
I'm assuming Sarah has watched too much Netflix and figures I've been defrauding you. Couldn't be further from the truth.
That's what this was, a real-life story that seems so unbelievable, but it was actually true.
A true story that all starts with one simple swipe to the right. I'm Sarah Ferris.
And I'm Emma Ferris, and this is my story, Conning the Con.
According to prison records, officials filed 15 disciplinary reports on Wiley for creating disturbances, harassing others, having contraband, and refusing orders. He also refused to participate in the prison's sex offender treatment program. All of this counted against him, and he served the full 12 years. So if you get out of prison early, like if he had, his sentence was 6 to 12 years. If he had gotten out of prison after 6 years, he would have been on parole. But since he served the full 12 years, he was not on parole.
Thank you for that clarification, OG of True Crime. Did it again.
just learned that on this story. Just learned it.
Aha. Serve the full time, doesn't need to be on any supervision, right?
Right. Which I don't know if I agree with that, but
not a lot of good choices on numerous fronts here.
Yeah.
The system as well as Wiley. So on January 22nd, 2004, Wiley was released from Auburn Correctional Facility, and he had to register as a level 3 sex offender. A level 3 sex offender is considered by law enforcement to be the highest risk to commit the crime again. He'd been in prison almost all of his adult life.
Yeah, he went into prison when he was 16. And every time he got out, he got in trouble again, like almost immediately.
Right away, yeah.
Yeah. But he had served his full time, so as I said, he was not on parole. He did not have to meet with a parole officer, was not under any supervision, and did not have to abide by any special conditions. The only thing Wiley was required to do was report to the police every 90 days, which he did.
He moved into the Elaine Apartments on West Onondaga Street in Syracuse near a relative. The Elaine was a few blocks from a city mission, and people drifted from one place to another. They might live at the mission for a while and then find better housing at the Elaine, while still using the mission's counseling services.
There was no lease to negotiate for an apartment. A conversation with the manager was all that was required. And that is how Wiley came to live there in March. A former Mission resident, he wandered in and asked if anything was available.
According to the landlord, Wiley was quiet and stayed to himself. He was always looking for work, so the landlord gave him odd jobs to do. But some of the residents found him to be creepy.
One neighbor claimed that he tied up a teenage girl because she owed him money. Another said that he had peeked into her apartment. Others said he was weird, or they just got weird vibes.
On April 19th, 2004, 18-year-old Tammy Sue Lynn Passanu went missing. The last person to speak to her was a social worker on April 16th, who arranged for her to see a doctor on the 19th. She never showed up for that doctor's appointment.
On April 22nd, someone called Syracuse Waste Management and requested a courtesy pickup of garbage in the trash bin where Wiley lived. No such request had ever been made before at that particular location.
Come again? At the time of her disappearance, Tammy lived on Bellevue Avenue, but she had some mental health issues and changed residences frequently. She would sometimes drop out of sight for a few days, but never for very long.
Tammy was the mother of a son who was an infant at the time of her disappearance. He was in foster care when she went missing. Because she sometimes dropped off the radar, her family did not report her missing until May 24th.
So they hadn't seen her for about a month. And Tammy's family felt that she would never go that long without contacting them. She had also not cashed any of her benefit checks since she was last heard from, and she had not refilled any of her prescriptions. She had also not been seen at Syracuse University Hospital since then.
And prior to her disappearance, she came to the pediatric emergency room at the hospital at least twice a month, seeking help for herself or sometimes simply asking for food. Remember, she had mental health issues, so she required a lot of visits to the hospital.
Assistance, yeah. And care.
She visited the emergency room 30 times in 2003, but none of the staff there had seen her since her disappearance.
On May 26th or 27th, a witness saw Wiley chasing a woman outside the apartment complex. The woman is thought to have been Lottie Thompson, a 31-year-old black woman who lived in the apartment right next door to Wiley.
Lottie was a mother of 3 who sold cosmetics to supplement her disability income. She was a high school graduate and a communicant of her church. Lottie was last heard from on May 26th.
Towards the end of May, the apartment manager, Junelle Starling, received complaints of an odor coming from Lottie's apartment. Wiley was one of the people reporting the odor, and he asked that her apartment be searched. So that's sick.
Yeah. On May 31st, Wiley joined Miss Starling when she entered Lottie's apartment. On the bed was a small pile of clothes, which Wiley directed Miss Starling's attention to. Quote, "He said, 'Look.' He was holding a foot up. He was calm, even in my hysteria. He just stood there," unquote. And Lottie's body was underneath the pile of clothes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I missed that detail in my research of the story. That was a surprise. Wow. Okay, so Lottie had been stabbed multiple times. Investigators said she had been dead for several days. Police began their investigation in her apartment and then worked their way outdoors. The next day, June 1st, the police searched the building's trash bin for evidence.
The garbage bin had not been emptied for weeks because it was blocked by an abandoned car. Inside the container, they found the body of Hannah Finnerty, 22. Hannah had lived in an apartment on the same street, but a few blocks away. She had last been seen around May 20th.
4 years earlier, Hannah had a bright future. She had graduated 6th in her class from a high school in Waterton, about 70 miles north of Syracuse. She excelled in sports and academics, and she earned a scholarship to an engineering college.
But 2 years after graduation, Hannah had slipped into heroin use and had dropped out of college. In 2002, she was arrested for drug possession, and in 2003, she went into a treatment program. But shortly before her death, she'd been arrested again.
Hannah was known for her friendly and outgoing personality, and she had a close-knit group of friends and family who cared deeply for her. She was 5 months pregnant when she died.
Both women had been bound, their throats slit, and both had suffered multiple stab wounds.
So now let's get into the investigation and the arrest. So after investigators learned that Wiley was a level 3 sex offender living in the same building as Lottie Thompson,
right next door,
he was taken in for questioning. After hours of interrogation, Wiley confessed to the murders of Lottie and Hannah.
He actually claimed to have killed a total of 7 people between April and May. Wiley said he had killed a teenage boy who was harassing him, a couple who used drugs with him, and a man who he says argued with him near the mission, and whom he says he threw into a river.
You know, I was just thinking, you know how there's like in cartoons like a evil meter? It just seems like Wiley is just
He's
any
pushing the edge of
opportunity
that,
he
yeah.
can. He wants it to go off
does
the
evil.
Richter scale. Yeah. So he told the police that all the killings occurred within a few blocks of the mission during the spring. And he told them about different trash bins where he said he had placed the bodies, the contents of which went into incinerators. However, his claims of most of the other murders could not be corroborated.
He told police that one of his victims was, quote, a red-haired girl named Tammy, unquote. And Tammy Passano was the only missing person in the Syracuse area who fit that description.
Wiley told police that he killed Tammy in the same way that he killed Lottie and Hannah, by tying her up and cutting her throat. Wiley said that when he went for the women's throats, he was like a pit bull or a ninja.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
gross.
just the gross evil meter just
Going
crank,
up, yeah.
Crank.
Well, here comes more.
Okay.
He said that when you go for the arteries in the throat, quote, there's no other sound like it, like air coming out of a balloon, unquote.
Bone-chilling comment.
Yeah.
Wiley claimed that he killed all 3 victims in a fit of anger. He told police he killed Lottie while they were having sex, Hannah after she haggled with him for crack cocaine, and Tammy after an argument about sexual predators and prisons.
He told police that he had been, quote, out of control for a while, unquote, and had problems dealing with his anger, which he couldn't control.
You don't say.
Yeah. Surprising.
Yeah.
He said that being institutionalized most of his life caused him to go into rages.
Yeah, that tracks. But he claimed that he knew he needed help and wouldn't stop until he got caught. So leaving Lottie in her apartment was his call for help.
I feel like you could have done something different, like actually call for help.
Yeah, right? I mean, he's at this mission place, which is my understanding from the description is that it's after people are in a more down and out position. They come up to this place, but still have access to the services if they need help, like counseling or housing placement or help getting to doctor's appointments and stuff like that. So
there were people there who could help him.
It was around. Yeah.
Yeah. So a joint effort was launched between the Criminal Investigation Division and the Missing Persons Division. Investigators searched through local landfills for the bodies of his other alleged victims, but they found nothing.
They also looked through all the missing persons cases that they had in Syracuse, and none of the reports matched Wiley's descriptions of the other people he said he had killed. Wiley later claimed that his statements to the police were involuntary. Oh, were they now? And that his interview amounted to psychological coercion.
I feel like he made up these other people to make it seem like, you know, I lied about these, so of course I lied about the other ones too, you know, just to confuse people.
Just to confuse people. Yeah, I mean, he seems impulsive to me in that way. Like, I'm never let him know your next move. That's Wiley.
Yeah. Police did not find Tammy's body, and authorities believe Wiley disposed of it in a trash bin, and it was hauled away to the county trash burning plant. Remember how that one bin, there was a request for a courtesy
pickup,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he probably called them to get rid of the body.
Yeah, to do the work for him.
Right.
Lazy rip.
However, investigators did search his apartment for evidence of her murder. And there, they found a box cutter with blood on it, and they sent it for DNA testing. And the blood on the box cutter was later matched to Tammy's DNA.
This December, Christmas gets creepy with the Empty Coffin podcast. This is host Greg Hansberry, and we are unwrapping the dark side of the holidays. This month, we revisit the haunting tragedy of a rock legend's final performance.
The band was on. They had just started their opening song. The killer walks across the stage, gun drawn.
We revive the forgotten tradition of telling ghost stories for Christmas.
There's this miserable, sour old man who spends all the time on his own in the graveyard, and the goblins take him.
And we sink our teeth into Nosferatu lore.
This story cropped up that the actor who played Nosferatu was so convincing that he was an actual vampire.
The Empty Coffin podcast is part of the Evergreen Network. Subscribe on your favorite app and have yourself a scary little Christmas.
Many people living in his neighborhood were furious that they had not been notified that a level 3 sex offender was living in the area.
Yeah.
At the time, it was up to law enforcement agencies to decide whether or not it was necessary to inform neighbors about an offender. Protect and serve, you know.
Yeah.
So now let's get into the trial. So Wiley entered a plea of not guilty. And during his trial, Wiley's defense tried to convince the jury that Wiley was mentally ill and had been coerced into confessing. Wiley claimed that the police promised him that the prosecution would not seek the death penalty if he came clean. So he confessed in order to avoid execution.
But Wiley was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of second-degree murder by a jury comprised of 6 men and 6 women. He was sentenced by County Judge Joseph Fahey in October 2006 to life in prison without the possibility of parole for killing Tammy Passano, Hannah Finnerty, and Lottie Thompson.
In sentencing Wiley for the murders, Judge Fahey told him, quote, "You're one of those creatures that occasionally slips through the gates of hell and walks among us, causing death, pain, and destruction," unquote. If we could fit that into an episode title, that's what.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
On appeal in 2009, the State Supreme Court Appellate Division in Rochester rejected Wiley's contention that his confession was the result of psychological coercion by police. They also found that there was sufficient evidence to support the conclusion that Wiley committed the 3 murders in a similar fashion, and the court rejected his appeal. So at least this time, they rejected his appeal, because I think on 2 of the other crimes that he committed...
his appeals were successful.
Yeah.
So now let's get into where are they now? Well, Wiley is currently serving his time at Great Meadow Correctional Facility in Comstock, New York.
Tammy's remains were never found. All that has ever been found is the blood in Wiley's apartment.
All right, that's it for the story. We're going to get into what we think of the case and our takes. What do you think of this case, Beth?
Well, I'm disappointed that we didn't get enough information about his early life to give us really any idea of what happened to him, why he did what he did.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Could have been a brain trauma, shitty childhood. I mean, he had brothers and sisters that did not get into trouble as far as we know.
Right.
So it's hard to say what happened to him.
Yeah, you're right.
Now, I understand that Syracuse is pretty racist, so...
Yeah. Yeah.
That could have been a factor. Also, when he mentioned being institutionalized most of his life, I mean, he killed somebody. Did he kill the woman? No, he raped somebody. The first crime when he was 16.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
he stabbed her.
Okay.
He stabbed her in the chest.
Okay.
But it doesn't say that he murdered her. When he was just 16, he sexually assaulted and stabbed a woman in the chest. So obviously, there was something wrong with him from the beginning.
Yeah.
But he was also institutionalized like his entire life. So that probably
couldn't
have
have helped. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's really hard to say why he turned out like he did. But he clearly was never going to stop.
Right.
And it's tragic how much this disaster of a man affected the lives around him, of those he victimized and their families.
Right.
And friends.
Yeah. Just to your point, like I'm thinking about the families, and Tammy's body was never found, you know, like
right.
I just...
How awful that would be.
Yeah, for her loved ones.
Yeah.
I couldn't get the fact that his mom had all these kids, including a daughter who died, took in foster kids, but never mentioned Nicholas?
Yeah.
That's odd.
Yeah.
Coupled with what the judge said to him at his sentencing about someone who walked out of the gates of HE double hockey sticks.
Yeah.
And for a young person whose brain isn't fully formed, just like Beth said, to be so violent and vicious and have literally no regard for other humans, period, is so disturbing and terrifying. And yeah, he was institutionalized for a long time. And we talk about this a lot. They don't get any help in prison, but he was offered that sex offender treatment program and he declined it, which was a very, poor choice. I don't know what that means, but it just sounds like somebody who lacks empathy and remorse.
Probably didn't think there was anything wrong with him.
Yeah, exactly. He did not think there was anything wrong with the things that he did, but he knew his deeds were punishable.
Right.
And that's why I am wrestling with this, him wanting to turn up the dial on the horror and callousness of and awfulness, but also not caring about that he did it, just that he would get in trouble for it.
Yeah, exactly.
He pleaded not guilty and then tried to claim that he was coerced, which is laughable.
Right.
And I just want us to remember Lottie Thompson, Hannah Finnerty, and Tammy Passano. The victims were each somebody's child who had value, that they had people that loved them in their lives and did not deserve what happened to them. So again, rest in paradise to those queens.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think. You know how to find us. Let's get into how not to get murdered. If you love true crime and you don't want to die, here's a tip for you.
This segment is not intended to be victim blaming. We thought of this segment because I read somewhere that a lot of people listen to true crime because they want to know what they can do to be safer. This is not meant to blame the victims. It's just learning from other people's experiences.
So, y'all, as we've said so much since we've got back from CrimeCon, we won't stop talking about it. But we were introduced to the Cyber Helpline, which is an organization that supports victims of cybercrime completely for free.
Yeah.
They offer free, immediate help when you or anyone you know who is in the US or in the UK experiences cybercrime or online harm. And you can visit that website, thecyberhelpline.com/gethelp.
Yeah, it's
and
amazing.
We thought it was the most incredible thing ever. I couldn't believe we hadn't heard of it before. So
I know. Amazing.
You need to know. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now it's shout out time where we shout out any content by or about any underrepresented or marginalized folks or any true crime goodies.
All right.
I got a true crime goodie.
Okay.
Wild story. It is called Into the Fire, The Lost Daughter.
Okay.
Ever heard of it?
I have, but I haven't watched it yet.
It is
good?
on Netflix. It is so good. Basically, a mom gives up her daughter for adoption, later finds out the people who adopted her daughter, who claimed to be a good family, were not monsters.
Oh, no.
Monsters. It's so sad, but the tenacity of this woman who just felt this connection because she was this girl's birth mother and was relentless in pursuing justice for her.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's good. And then I also wanted to shout out Second Sunday, which is a queer Black news podcast about queer people finding, keeping, and sometimes losing faith.
Huh.
And they won a Black Podcast Award a couple of weeks ago, and they beat Oprah Winfrey.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. So it's a wonderful show. Check it out.
Right on.
What do you got?
Well, I wanted to shout out another podcast award winner.
Ooh.
This one is Ice Cold Case.
Yes.
And the host is Madison McGee, and we met her at CrimeCon UK.
Yes.
And she, in this podcast, investigates the murder of her father, John McGee, who was murdered in 2002. And she was driven by her desire to find justice and began conducting her own investigation into his murder, and it remains unsolved to this day.
Yes. Madison is a remarkable young Black woman, and just meeting her, like, I got tears because we were sitting right next to her and they were talking about her story. Man, oh man. So check out that podcast. So again, I'm going to recap. Second Sunday, a queer Black news podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Into the Fire, The Lost Daughter, a TV documentary on the Netflix, and it's only 2 episodes.
Oh, okay.
So it's easy to get through. And Ice Cold Case, which is the winner of the Black Podcast Award for True Crime, hosted by Madison McGee. And that's it.
That's it.
Beth, where can the people find us?
Our website is fruitloopspod.com, and we use Fruit Loops Pod for all of our social media. The footnotes for each episode can be found on our website. Plus, check it out for the different ways that you can support the show. Also, join us on Patreon, where we have literally hundreds of hours of bonus content. You can also support us by supporting our sponsors or by giving us a 5-star review.
5 stars only, please.
Also, don't forget to subscribe.
That's right. Now, listen close. This is a weekly podcast, and new episodes drop every Thursday. So until next time, look alive, y'all. It's crazy out there.
All right.
Hello?
Hello? I can barely hear you.
Really? Oh, let me...
Yeah.
I don't know. All right, I'm not going to move an inch.
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay. The scriptaroonie. Do you mind if I take a sip of water? I'm holding my microphone in my hand, so I need to put it on the ground.
Oh,
okay.
no.
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God.
At CrimeCon UK, you can hobnob with them.
And that is Caucasian for...
Oh, hang out with, talk
okay.
to.
Okay.
Archipelago. Onondaga, and in 7... You know what? What's tripping me up is this Onondaga. I don't know how to pronounce it. So
I don't know either. I've just been going with Onondaga, but it's okay,
Onondaga.
friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me start over.
Okay. What's grist?
Grist. I want to
You know
say...
what? I forgot you have COVID. I don't want to ask anymore. I'll Google it
I want
later.
to say some kind of meal or something. I'm gonna do it.
Don't do it.
Grist.
Don't do it.
I'm doing it.
Friend.
What is grist? Oh, that's interesting. It's an idiom. Grist for the mill. It's an idiom.
Okay.
That means a useful experience, material, or knowledge, but that's not it. What is grist? Grain.
Got it.
And the unemployment rate for Black residents is 15% compared to 4.4% for white residents.
Whoa. That's out of control.
That's
Who's in
disgusting.
charge over there?
Yeah. White people.
Ba-dum-bum.
The mother. She was a mudda.
A mudda? This is New York. This is New York, so maybe she was a mudda. A mother.
The State Supreme Court Appellate Division in Rochester, Appellate. Yeah. On appeal in 2009.
You know, I was just thinking, you know how there's like in cartoons like a evil meter? It just seems like Wiley is just
He's
any
pushing the edge of
opportunity
that,
he
yeah.
can. He wants it to go off
does
the
evil.
Richter scale. Yeah. So yeah, no,
Gross.
just the gross evil meter just
Going
crank,
up. Yeah.
crank.
Well, here comes more.
Okay. Let's go back and look.
Let's go back.
I'm afraid to move because if I move my microphone or my hand, I'm afraid it's going to. I'm resting it on my leg. If you love true crime and you don't want... I'm scared. Sorry. I got to redo it. Do over. Yeah. I'm just scared that the mic's going to slip because I'm just getting so into it. Okay. I'm going to hold it with two hands.
We did it.
I'm going to get this audio in the drive and pray that when I upload it tomorrow, it's not doo-doo.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry. So. I hope so. Fingers crossed.
I hope.
God. All right. We need a win. Here we go. Night,
right.
friend. Love you.
Good night. Love you too. Bye.
I want to take a moment to tell you about my podcast, Carol Costello Presents Blind Rage. In 1984, a woman named Phyllis Cottle was abducted in broad daylight, tortured, and left to die in a burning car in Akron, Ohio. At the time, I was a rookie reporter covering this horrific story. Since then, I've reported every kind of crime imaginable. I've been able to leave most of them at work, but not this one, the one that buried itself under my skin and stayed put. Phyllis Cottle was a badass woman, and I want to tell you her story. A production of Evergreen Podcasts and signature title of the Killer Podcast Network, you can find Carol Costello Presents Blind Rage wherever you get your podcasts. Discover more great true crime and paranormal programming at killerpodcast.com.
3 a.m., the comedy horror podcast that holds weekly gatherings around the campfire. Let me tell you what you're going to get. You're going to hear stories about demonic possessions, prison stabbings, skinwalkers, glitches in the Matrix, cult leaders, missing 411, night marchers, Operation Paperclip, Mesopotamian devil worship, and so many monsters it'll give Kanye West a runaway for his money. Pop and meme culture also aren't off topic. A camp where laughs and scares are constantly competing for first place. We're just a group of friends, trying to bust each other's balls, find the best stories, and expand the circle in the process. 3 a.m., the comedy horror podcast not for the faint or fragile of heart. Let's go.